Good evening, good people. This is your host, Calvin Anderson, for the Check In With podcast. Today, we have another special guest with us who's going to give us so much insight and so much knowledge and her wisdom, all the way from Athens in Greece. So, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Melika AzizHaghighi. Melika, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Melika, for the listeners, could you give us just an introduction and, let us know who you are?
Sure. So, my name is Melika. I'm a psychologist. I'm based in Athens. Originally, I'm Iranian, born and raised in Tehran. But when I was 20, I moved to Athens and I did my studying in here. And afterwards, I decided to stay here and work. So, that has been my story.
Okay. What made you want to get into the psychology and what was the push into it?
Well, to be honest, at first, I did not want to be a psychologist. And after I finished my bachelor in psychology, I decided to pursue a master and to become a psychologist and work with people. It was just like I really liked the topics and the way that I could learn about people and the philosophy of like the whole thing. It was very interesting to me, but the first plan was not for me to become a psychologist.
Okay. What was the first plan?
I wanted to become a lawyer.
That's two different.
I know.
Give
It's
me, give me that. Give me the journey from okay, I want to be a lawyer, and now I'm a psychologist. What happened?
Well, I moved to Athens, and the university that I wanted to study, they did not have any law major. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna study psychology so I can get a better understanding of people, which will become handy later on in law, and then I'm gonna transfer to law. That never happened. I like psychology. And then by end of my studying, I was like, okay, I just want to do a psychology. And then I did a master in psychology.
How long ago was this that you did your masters?
I started my master's 2018, and it was supposed to end 2020, but because of COVID, it ended 2021.
If you could be a lawyer now, would you, or are you happy with where you
N-
are now?
None, not at all. I wouldn't change this perfection for world, actually.
Melika, we definitely we had a conversation beforehand just in terms of what topics to speak about.
Mhm.
And the first one we spoke about was trauma.
Yeah.
Now, for the listeners, could you give us the definition of what trauma is and then go into, I guess, people who may not know that they have trauma, how can they how can they get through it? How can they overcome it?
Well, I have like a very, let's say, different response to this one because I think everyone has some sort of trauma. It's
Mhm.
just like, on the spectrum, it goes from 0 to 100 different levels. It's just, we don't understand it sometimes. And I always give very simple example to people that you not per se you have to go through something extremely severe or adverse to have trauma. Trauma can be anything. Um, let's say any kind of negligence can be a sign of trauma later on in your life, and any emotional and psychological response that we have towards something that it has caused us negative emotions. So, and for me, because I have worked with a lot of group of people that they experience trauma specifically in a very severe cases, uh, trauma was always something that it's something that you respond to an event mainly. Your reactions, your emotions, your feelings, everything is impacted by it. And basically, it's a psychological journey that you go through when adversity happens. Adversity any kind. For me, this is a very big thing that I don't like people to think of trauma as such a big issue or something very traumatic has to happen to in order to be a trauma. Um, because it's very simple. And the more we try to understand our traumas and the adversities that we have experienced in life, it's easier to deal with. So at the same time that I know in the past years we hear this word a lot, I think it has been misconcepted and, let's say, not defined properly. So that's how I would define it.
How is it working with trauma? You know, you work with it in your work. How do you how do you work with trauma in your work? Probably that's what I want to ask you.
It very much depends on the topic of it, but because for some reason I didn't even choose it uh, from the start of my practicum that we do in psychology, at the end of your master's.
Yeah.
And I happen to work with a lot of people that they experience trauma, specifically refugee people and minorities, a lot of people that have gone through severe traumas. And at the same time, I was working with women that they have gone through abuse, gender-based violence, and sexual gender-based violence. So it very much depends on what topic of trauma we are talking about. If we are talking about childhood trauma, personally, I approach it very differently than someone that who just came out of a acute trauma in front of me, because the main thing here is to help the person to become functional on a daily basis.
Yeah.
If it's something from past, it's something, let's say, more long term. And I usually let the client to go with the pace that they feel comfortable and feel safe to bring it up. Definitely, it's something that we discuss and we share that we need to talk about it at some point. But I let them, to decide when they feel comfortable with that. However, with a recent trauma, it works differently because they need to go through it to explain it to you. First of all, any kind of traumatic event, it has a shock component into it. Until the time that you have not verbalized it, you have not talked about it, it's going to stay in your body and your brain. So one of the hardest thing of trauma for me is that people don't understand that a huge part of it needs to be verbalized. You need to put it into terminology in a way that there's no terminology for it. So for a lot of people, it's difficult to use words. How am I going to put it into words? Because the pain, you cannot put it into words in a way that it has happened. And once, for the people that recently they have gone through it, I think once they talk about it, a huge part of it can be explained that, okay, this happened, and it becomes real then
Mm.
to them.
Yeah.
And afterwards we discuss about it, that how has impacted you, what is happening now, how does it has impacted your functionality. So for me, the whole focus is the client's well-being in the moment, how we can carry on for a while, and then we will focus on other aspects, how it's impacting you on XYZ. Their well-being, psychological and physical, comes first to keep them functional. This is how usually I go with it.
Talk to me then on gender-based violence, because you mentioned it not too long ago. Talk to me more on that. I'd love to hear about that and just what it is. I think I've heard about it briefly, but I haven't ever gone into it totally. So please, could you give us what that is?
So gender-based violence is when, because of our gender, as it says, we are impacted by certain behaviors, and it has a huge cultural component to it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, gender is perceived differently in every culture. I don't say what is wrong, what is right, that's a very cultural thing. So depending on those cultures, there are certain practices that has become common and normalized,
Yeah.
that if we take it out of the context, it's abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And so gender-based violence is pretty common. It can be verbal, it can be psychological, mainly it's physical. And So yeah, there was a huge group of people that for many years I was working with that, from partners, family members, that they were, let's say, the survivor of this
Yeah.
behaviors.
How does one know if this is what they're going through? What are I don't want to say the symptoms, but what could be the triggers for someone going through like the gender-based violence? What does that how does one become fully aware that this is what's happening to them, and how do they make the steps in order to heal from it?
That's the hardest part for the survivor of gender-based violence because specifically if you're in the environment,
Yes.
it's very hard because it's so normalized and it's so blended in the daily life that you think it's normal. If what I'm going through, my neighbor and her daughter are going through the same thing. So what am I here complaining? Yeah.
Mm,
So in that case, it's very difficult. Of course, there are people that they can be more self-aware and exposed to the information, let's say, to understand that certain behaviors are not okay. In general, it's very difficult. And even if we are talking to someone, even if I have a client that they are here, but they are, let's say, they are not European, I would never suggest them to leave their partner specifically because 95% of the femicides happens when the partner is leaving the abuser.
mm,
We don't suggest that usually, and they have to try to come out with a proper planning and decide if afterwards they can be safe. And because I have worked with a lot of NGOs, when the cases were severe, what we were doing is that we would offer them a safe shelter that no one has information, and they would be sent there. They would have a new phone, especially if minor was involved. 90% when minor was involved, because at the same time, if someone doesn't want to come out of an abusive relationship because they are not a minor, you cannot force them. And that's a very difficult procedure to help someone to understand that what you're going through is really not okay. And in general, for people that they have any long-term relationships, let's say,
yeah.
that partner is abusive, it's very difficult because uh, throughout the whole relationship, your self-confidence is destroyed.
Mm,
Your self-worth is destroyed. It doesn't exist. So you are in a very codependent in a relationship with the abuser. That abuser is telling you outside of this house, no one loves you, no one cares about you but me. Also, you have correlated pain to love so much that it has become very normal.
mm,
And the biggest part of this journey is actually when the survivor makes it outside. And then the actual work starts for them to not to just go through another relationship that is like that because it feels safe and it feels like home because they know how to function in something abusive. And for them, it's very difficult to function in a non-abusive relationship because they haven't been exposed to one.
mm,
And usually what happens is that they go through a relationship that it's not abusive and then they sabotage it, which is a vicious cycle. So it has a lot of work into it.
especially when you spoke about the person already having their self-confidence destroyed, and then if they're able to, leave that partner or that relationship, and then in some ways kind of seeing something that is familiar because to them it was safe at one point, even though it was damaging, that kind of navigation of, okay, this looks the same. Yes, it's harmful, but for me it felt safe, but I know that I can't go there because the same results will
Yeah.
come if I go into this next relationship because it's the same patterns that are happening. That's part of no. Thank you so much for sharing that. I like the, as you said, it's a vicious cycle,
Yeah.
and with the work done, the person's able to see and in some ways put up the boundaries that they need to, and actually tell themselves, no, I'm not going back into this space. I've fully come out of it. I don't want to return to that. So I think that's powerful, what you said. Melika, speak to me on the diversity in therapy.
That's an interesting one. So, well, I have been fortunate enough and lucky enough to work with a lot of people from different backgrounds, different cultures. And what I have understood after these years is that uh, the therapy that they teach you at university is very westernized.
Mm,
I mean, now we have more access. To be honest, there are certain trainings with multicultural aspect and all that, but the core of it, it's not like that. And there are certain approaches that they have never been, let's say, tailored to function in certain cultures.
mm,
And now that I'm learning more and I'm understanding more, I see that actually certain things wouldn't work with a specific culture. And this needs to be tailored because it won't respond the way that it's going to respond to someone who's from a more Western society, let's say, or simply because therapy is a very individualistic approach. If we take it as it is to a person that was born and raised in a collectivistic approach, it needs tailoring. It's not going to work out. You cannot tell someone that is trying to understand the concept of, let's say, boundary. Well, from which they're from a collectivistic culture, that, okay, you know what? If someone or a family member or your siblings is calling you 10 times a day, don't just respond. That's not going to work. That's going to bring so much more, let's say, difficulty and challenges in the relationship
mm.
because culturally is not accepted. It can be a sign of disrespect. And for me, that's one part of it. And another thing that I have, for example, experienced myself is that very simple thing in therapy. When you're a student, they teach you silent in therapy is very important. Like keep the silences, they're meaningful, they're important. And you have that in your mind, you enter the therapy, and you see that with a lot of people it works. But when you start working with certain cultures, I would give example, like for example, Persian culture.
Yeah.
In Persian culture, it does not work like that because it can be a sign of disrespect if I'm just staring. At least at first, till I explain to the client that what's the purpose of it. And I go a little bit of a psychoeducational approach about it to explain how the whole thing works. It will take me 6 months, you know? And then maybe. But in general, it's very important to take those things into consideration. And I see it a lot. I have a lot of feedback from different clients that they worked with a very, like, let's say, westernized approach, and they did not feel heard and validated, let's say. And as therapists, I think it's our job when we have someone from a different background, we need to educate ourselves. We need to learn about their cultural background. If we don't know something, if we don't understand something, genuinely believe it's the most ethical thing to ask. Okay, say it, I haven't heard of it. Or, you know what, I Googled this, this is what I found. We cannot assume, we have to ask all the time. And not all the time from the client either.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I would say because I have experienced it myself with a therapist that I was going to. And at some point, I was tired of giving this culture, let's say, courses thing, and I was like, okay, that's too much question. Like, I'm here to talk about me, not about my culture. So I think there should be a balance there, but there should be an understanding that there is a difference. How we What you just said about trauma. Trauma is defined very differently in different culture. There are different beliefs about it,
Yeah.
or certain practices. If people come from cultures that they're very spiritual, I definitely would suggest them more of a spiritual, counseling kind because it works better. And ethics, morality, certain practices. It might sound, strange to therapists, this is not the place for it to be strange. It has to be explored.
Mm.
But I hear a lot of feedbacks that people have had experiences, and to me, I was like, okay, that's something that we as psychologists we lack and we need to work on. We cannot take the same approach that has been taught to us without tailoring into the room when we are helping someone to better and treating them.
There's so much to unpack with that, just in terms of the challenges and, you know, it happening to you firsthand, and how you deal with that and how you manage that through your practice and your work, and even with clients, like you said. How have you managed it, Melika, personally speaking? How have you managed if we look at therapy, or from where we are in London, when we talk about counseling or therapy, we have a specific person in mind, or what that looks like. How have you managed, like, the challenges that you faced in therapy, whether it be through colleagues or whatever it is? How have you managed to just keep pressing on and keep doing amazing work?
Thank you very much. Um, I'm just like very enthusiastic about the field, to be honest with you. And I read a lot of things about it. I have done different trainings. I have worked in different settings that has helped me a lot. But I have a lot of experiences with NGOs that was like groundbreaking experience for me, because the amount of information that is there, the amount of experience that you have there, which if you're not exposed to it in that situation, you would never learn it in a normal practice setting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm one of the thing is that I kept trying, like any opportunity that came, I just grabbed it. Either if it was a pro bono case,
Mm.
either if it was just like 3 months volunteering. I I cannot recall that I have turned down any job ever regarding counseling, psychotherapy. If it was research that it's like it, they just needed, for example, researchers or interviewers, I would just grab it, because you would learn so much more as an interviewer and people's story. I have done like I was a part of a study about gender-based violence. Like that was the raw information, but not to a therapist, to an interviewer. So you were getting exactly demographic information and biography of someone, which it was a very different approach.
Mm.
There's a set of, a specific questions in front of you, and you're just like getting from that. And to be honest, for me, it's just like exposing yourself to things that makes you uncomfortable. If a client is making you uncomfortable, understand it, supervision. For me, the most knowledge and the best experiences I have is from the times that I have been very uncomfortable. And I have always tried to understand what is it, what's happening, what about certain, approach doesn't sit well with me. So I always like to challenge, and that's what I have done actually. I like going against odds. So that helped me a lot to gain a lot of information um, without me even trying to. It was just coming, flowing.
I like how you spoke about, if there's things about your client that make you uncomfortable, that you address it in supervision, and you unpack it, you discover it, you explore it. You don't just let it happen to you. And I really, really like that. I like how you said, no, like if you're faced with it, like, begin to tackle it in the most genuine way possible, and understand why you're feeling uncomfortable, and what about whatever it is that your client's bringing is triggering that response in you. And when you said that, it just made me think of, well, you kind of said it in the end when you said you don't back down from things, like you like challenges, and it just speaks on, I guess, the exploration that goes into our field. And you can go as far as you want to go in our field. Like, there's so much things to draw from, so many things to learn, and the only thing that actually does stop you is yourself. So I really do. I like that aspect of the deep exploration that goes into us as therapists. Talk to me on that, Melika, when you said the stuff that comes up from your client and having to deal with it. Do you think, because I don't know, I don't know many therapists that do, and if they don't, I'm kind of wondering why, but why is it important? I asked this question. Why is it important for us to deal with those things that come up from maybe ourselves and maybe our client? Why is it important?
Because our work is extremely human. Like they're two human building a relationship here. So if you are helping someone to go out there, how to build a healthy relationship, how can you do it if they're sitting in front of you and you don't have a proper relationship with them? I always tell my clients that relationship with your therapist is the weirdest and at the same time one of the nicest relationship that you have, because it's one of the deepest relationships that you ever built, but with a stranger.
Yeah.
So, which is the nice thing about it. And if you don't talk about the challenges that comes between you and the client, how the client can help that and replicate that, fabricate it in a relationship outside. Because a relationship that client and the therapist have is a fraction of that client in the outside world.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very good opportunity for especially a lot of people out there, everyone, I think, there is not much of a good example of a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Once you make this relationship with boundaries, safety, and relationships that they are meaningful. When you bring that into therapy, that's something that you are giving an example to your client there, let's say. So I always tell my clients, if something bothers you, do tell me. I'm a human. I might say something wrong. If I don't understand you, if you're mad at me, there's nothing wrong with you coming back here and tell me, you know what, you said this didn't sit well with me. I'm mad at you. I will be like, fine, let's just open it up, try to understand it. And if I have to, I will even apologize to my client because I'm a human. Just because I'm a therapist doesn't mean that I might not say something that doesn't sit well with them. But that shows that, okay, we can repair here.
Mm.
With a good communication, with trust and safety, we can repair, we can work it through. That's why I'm very enthusiastic about the transference, countertransference when things come between the client and the patient. I think it's very important for us to address them. I know it's not something that a lot of therapists do, different approaches.
Yeah.
But,
For the listeners, Melika, can you explain what the transference and the countertransference is, please?
it works. So transference is when the client is having a certain feeling towards the therapist. I'm simplifying it here.
Please, yeah.
So, for example, they are mad at you, but you're not the reason. You're just the object of madness here. And countertransference is when the therapist is feeling something towards the patient here or the client. So this happens a lot, but this is a very core, let's say, component of psychoanalysis and psychodynamic approach. Not all the approaches are, I think, going with this thing, if I'm not mistaken. But to me, it's very important. And there's a lot of approaches out there that they focus on the relationship between the therapist and the client, because I think it's a very important, let's say, not per se relationship bond that you're making here. It's happening and it has a lot of value to it when it happens properly.
And I guess it's so important to understand these things in terms of the transference and the counter, because, like you said, and you said it earlier when you said it's two human beings coming together to build a therapeutic relationship
Mhm.
and, in many ways, collaborate to bring great results to not even just the client, but to us as therapists as well, because we learn from our clients, right?
Great.
Um, and I guess to address that from early, and I guess I like to use the analogy of like putting all our cards on the table so we can all see, we can see everything. We can see the good, the bad, the ugly from both sides, and we can choose, okay, maybe I don't want to work with this therapist because of this, but they've actually showed me this is who they are. This is what they carry. And I've shown them my cards, and now we can choose what we want to do. We can see, okay, let's work together. Or maybe maybe we're not a good fit. Maybe we need to go, I need to go somewhere else. So it's so interesting to hear. And I think you're so right in terms of many therapists don't really speak on the transference and the counter a lot. And I think that's probably, if not one of the key elements in the work we do, or else where are we, what navigation point are we going from if we don't understand those two things?
Yeah, it's very important.
Malika, speak to me on challenging clients.
Well, that's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
And I do always give heads up to my clients actually when we start working, that I always tell them that, you know what, at some point you're gonna hate me, but that's okay. I can sit with that. But, at the end of the day, you're not spending this time and they're not investing even financially for me to like sugarcoat things and tell you what you want to hear instead of what you really need to hear.
Yeah.
So, to be honest, it has been great. Like, they appreciate the honesty.
Mm,
And I do have clients, some of them, they have very nice sense of humor. They come and they're like, I need you to give me a reality check today. And I'm like, no, when it's the time, we'll do it. But after some time, definitely it's something that once the relationship has trust and it feels safe, it has to be done. And depending on how you work. But I always tell my clients that, I want you to be honest, I will be honest, and direct as well. I do have a pretty direct approach. So I have actually never, now that you're saying it, now I'm thinking, I never had a client that had problem with it. They actually
good.
all appreciate it. And I think that's very important for us to understand what is about our character that can come into our therapy in our work, because I think even every person, we all go to a same, let's say psychologist school, we all have the same masters. We are different because we're different humans, we are
Of
not.
course.
So we have a different understanding of it, and I think that touch of your personality, you can bring it to your practice, can be very helpful. So I'm a very blunt poster in general, even outside of therapy. So, and I used to be very much criticized by it and judged by it, but I never gave up on it. I just learned how to tailor it in my work.
Yeah.
And actually, it has become one of the most important things in my therapy, that people actually choose me because of that. They want to work with me because of that. And because I have understood and I have actually learned that, okay, when is the time to, push it with a client? When is the time that, it's not the time? You need to back off for now. And then later on, you can proceed with it. But I do enjoy challenging my clients, of course, all of them in different ways and different topics. And, you know, kudos to them. They all take it. They all take it. They all, I think they go with it.
Malika, for any aspiring psychologist and therapist that wants to come into the field, or they're on their journey right now, embarking on their training, and they're on their last year or they just began, what advice would you give them?
I'm not sure if I'm in a place to give anyone advice, but I would say what has worked for me, and maybe that would be something that it will work for them. Uh, it's not about the theory. It's about how you understand the theory and you translate it into your work, because there's thousand things out there, but if it doesn't make sense to you, it cannot come handy in your therapy if you don't believe in it, if you don't think that this is the right thing to do. So that's something that I would always question things and see if it sits with my morality, with my ethics. There are certain approaches, certain practices, certain techniques that I would never do, because in this time that I'm doing my practice, ethically doesn't sit well with me, certain policies. And maybe other people tell me otherwise, or maybe my supervisor would, suggest me otherwise. But I do believe what works for me. So that's a very important part, to understand what is important to me and to my practice, and I want to keep it there.
Mhm.
And of course, to study a lot. You study a lot, but don't worry, because later on in therapy, you have to go back and study all of them all over again.
Yeah.
And that always, it's a never ending. And try to understand as much as what would you like to work with.
Hmm.
It's very more important to understand what I don't want to work with. That
Mm.
was that I learned. It's very important to understand what type of a group you cannot assist, you cannot help. Um, what is it that, for some reason, is a personal background, is anything that, you know, might challenge you there. It's very important for us to understand what I cannot do. And yeah, keep it open minded. And that's it. And boundaries. I'm very peculiar with boundaries. Boundaries are the most important thing in our work.
Why are boundaries important in our work, Melika?
Not in our work, in our world, I would say in general, boundaries are very important, but in our work specifically, because we are, in my opinion, I am obliged to offer a safe space to the person that is sitting in front of me. And at first, they might not like the boundaries, like, okay, 50 minutes, time's up. Or we start sharp 4:50, it's done. Cancellations and all those things. And I think all my clients at first, when I tell them my policies, because I'm a bit too strict, they're like, wow,
Mm.
okay, but I always explain them why. And I think almost all of them, after 2.5 years of work,
Yeah.
when they saw their partners, their siblings, they go to different therapists, which with a different type of boundaries, which is less strict, they were like, you know what? I appreciate what you did. I don't have any feedback better than the boundary feedback that I have always received, because they're like, it feels safe always. And that's a very important thing for me, because it's very important for me to know that my client knows every Wednesday their safest space is 4 p.m. and that's never going to change. And it might be a little bit of a, a strict way of looking at it, but I think it's very important.
Oh, thank you so much, Melika. Melika, before you go, I want to throw some fun, rapid questions at you for the listeners to get to know you a bit better. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Malika, if you could work anywhere remotely in the world, where would it be and why?
Remotely.
Remotely. You could go anywhere.
I think it's would choose Athens.
Athens?
Yeah, because I have my people here, and that's the most important things for me,
Yeah.
and my dog. But uh, I think good friends are the most important thing in life. And I have been very lucky with that in life. So I think I would still choose Athens. If I work remotely, it means I have more time with them.
Do you have a favorite season that you like?
Yes. Fall is my favorite season.
Why?
I think I don't like heat. I don't like summer at all. That's
Yeah.
why.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Melika, do you have a favorite quote?
Yes. It's obviously it's from Freud, which I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but it says, for all our struggle, after all our struggles in retrospect, they become pleasure, which I really, really believe in that after your struggle, once you keep distance from them, once you look at them when they're done, you just smile back.
Hmm.
And a lot of it might not make sense, but definitely it builds character.
And last question, Melika, is if it wasn't for therapy, where would you be?
If you mean if I wasn't a therapist?
Yeah? If you wasn't a therapist, where would you be?
If I wasn't a therapist, definitely I would be an art curator.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite artist or painting that you like?
Yes.
Which one?
Kandinsky, Blue Sky. I mean, I love him. He's one of my favorite artists. By
Yeah.
Blue Sky by Kandinsky is one of my favorite paintings, and a lot of paintings actually. A lot of I love a lot of paintings. A lot of let's say artists, contemporary, classic. I'm very much into art.
Malika, someone's heard you today, the listeners have heard you and they want to get in touch with you. What would be the best way for them to reach you?
Email would be the best one.
Email. Okay.
Yeah, LinkedIn and email, but I always have my phone, so email is much easier for me because I do not check any other social media. But definitely email I always check.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have been your host, Calvin Anderson. We have had the amazing Melika AzizHaghighi today. Yeah, what can I say? She's taken us through trauma. She's taken us through gender-based violence. She's taken us through boundaries. She's taken us through the therapeutic relationship and what that entails, and us growing as therapists and as clients too. So there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to take in. There's a lot of note taking that needs to happen. I know for myself. And we just thank Melika for her time today. But listeners, you take care. Speak soon. God bless. And we thank Melika for today. All right. Take care.
Thank you very much.